Hi, and welcome to section 4 of the course where we're going to be talking about Simulink. Now that we've talked about MATLAB, let's move into Simulink and some of its uses for science and engineering. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the library browser. So this is the library within Simulink where you can get all the components that you're going to add into your models. All right, so let's jump on the computer and let's talk a little bit more about the library browser within Simulink.
All right, so once you've launched Simulink and have created a blank model, so a model from scratch, you're gonna see a window like this. And again, we've talked about this before, but this is basically just a blank model. Now, what I want to talk about in this lecture is what's called the library browser. So the library browser is basically where you can get all of the components that you can add then into a Simulink model. So the library browser is located over here. Again, this is the view of a blank model. So you can go here and click on the library browser, and that's gonna pull up this window over here. So in here, you have many different components that you can add into your Simulink model. Now this tree over here on the left is gonna depend on what version of Simulink you have, or rather what package within Simulink you have. So you can have many different packages that you can buy extra for Simulink. Now, hopefully for this course, you at least have what's called the Simscape package, which is this one over here. And again, I talked about how you can download a free trial of that in a previous lecture. But basically, the Simscape Foundation Library, which is found under Simscape Foundation Library, has many different domains for different types of applications. So you have an electrical, you have gas, hydraulic, isothermal, liquid, magnetic, mechanical, moist air, physical signals, thermal liquid, and two-phase fluids. So these are what we call domains. So you can have an electrical domain, a mechanical domain, magnetic, and so on and so forth. But again, this is what's called the library browser, and is where you can find all of the components that you can then add into a Simulink model to do different simulations. So for example, we have an electrical library, and in electrical elements, we find things normally found in circuits like capacitors, an op-amp, a diode, an electrical reference, or a ground, essentially, an inductor, that kind of thing. Same thing for electrical sensors. We have a current and a voltage sensor. And for electrical sources, we have AC current and voltage sources, DC current and voltage sources, and controllable sources, that kind of stuff. Same thing for all the other domains. So for example, for mechanical, if we go to mechanical sensors, you'll find an ideal force sensor, a rotational motion sensor, a torque sensor, a translational motion sensor, and same thing if we go to mechanical sources, you can find in here an angular velocity source, an ideal force source, ideal torque source, and an ideal translational velocity source. So different mechanical sources. Same thing applies for, let's say, hydraulic. You can go to hydraulic sources. You'll find things like a hydraulic constant flow rate source. So within the Simscape Foundation Library, again, you have different subdomains. So you have like electrical, mechanical, magnetic, that kind of stuff. And within those subdomains, then you have different blocks or different components that you can then add into your model to build specific models for specific applications. Now notice one thing here that Simulink does, and that's that, for example, the electrical components all have the same color, but the mechanical component, if I go over here to mechanical, has a different color. So these are kind of color coded in a way so that we don't mix up different domains. Now you can have different domains in the same simulation, and sometimes that's helpful. So for example, if you're trying to simulate electromechanical phenomena, then you can have some electrical components and some mechanical components, and they can interact with each other. But again, everything that you add into your Simulink model is going to be found here in what's called the library browser. This is where you find all of your components.